Hey, number ones, welcome back to Metatrons Academy. Alright, so you asked me to check out this video, which is called Learning a New Language is Easy, actually, and it's from the channel Easy, actually. Now, I don't know if it's a sort of comedy channel, sarcastic, or if he's actually presenting information that can be used in a way that makes sense. I have no idea. The channel is quite large, 823,000 subscribers. In fact, let's have a look at it. We have an idea what we've got. He says, explaining stuff with few words and more picture, comment to suggest stuff you want to see or use, blah blah blah. Okay, so it's one of those like simply animated, I guess, channels. And yeah, it's got a lot of stuff. Learning any language, become smart, trolley problem, personality, getting ripped to that one person, take your time. Right, okay, cool. So let's see how he justifies this statement. The video was posted 9 months ago. Let's jump right into it.
Learning a language is actually very easy. You start off by watching this video right here. Then you stare at this screen.
I see, so it's probably gonna be comedy. I'm so looking forward to it. 小马.
You pick a language you have no business learning. Do one lesson, forget about it, then search up videos about how to learn that language in 6 weeks, made by a YouTuber who learned it in 6 years.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, or even a YouTuber who has never learned it. Like, let's be honest, let's be real. I'll level with you. People that don't even know how to learn it. But yeah, it's so true. Those exist.
But if you want to actually learn a language, you have to make sure you're not doing it for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Sure, if you learned a hard
私は好きだ.
enough language, it would probably impress a lot of strangers, and it would probably get you a lot of views on YouTube.
Right.
Subscribers too. I think some people even make money from it. But if you're a beginner, you should really be picking a language that's easy enough for you to actually enjoy learning it.
I know it's sarcastic, but I think within the sarcasm, he's also explaining his own thoughts on the matter in a way that actually makes sense. And I, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I have a feeling that we will get more serious information that actually makes sense from this yellow stick man on a black background than a lot of those fake polyglots channels that are just telling you nonsense like, yeah, I picked up this language in 15 hours and now I'm so fluent, look at me, blah blah blah, and that kind of nonsense. With that being said, the way what he said now, I think it's very contextual, anecdotal in fact. He did say, oh, pick a language that, what did he say? Let me hear it again.
You should really be picking a language that's easy enough for you to actually enjoy learning it.
No, I disagree with that actually. You shouldn't pick the language that is easy enough for you to enjoy. You should learn a language. You should pick a language that you would enjoy, and that will make it easy for you, even if it's an extremely difficult language. So difficulty in language learning is in fact a topic that is quite deep, but at the end of the day, my experience as a teacher, because I used to teach and help students for over a decade, in fact, reaching fluency in whatever language they chose, and as someone who has studied languages as a major focus in my university years together with history, I have to say that now I'm kind of interested in other Romance languages such as Portuguese and Spanish. But if you had told me, hey, do you want to learn Spanish and Portuguese and French when I was a university student, when I was in my 20s, I would have told you, nah, I'm not interested, because I liked a challenge. So if you forced me, you have to take this test in Spanish, it would have been hard for me because I was not interested. I am now, but I wasn't back then. Instead, when I did study for Japanese tests, Mandarin Chinese tests, I loved doing it because I was interested in the culture, in the history, in the language, in the subculture, in the pop culture, everything that had to do with those languages, and I loved it, and that made it easier. Not easy, but definitely easier for me, because there was the passion side. So it wasn't something that I needed to sit down and force myself to do. It was something that I would do anyways for the entirety of my free time. Whether it be a game, I would swap it to Japanese. Whether it be a TV series or a movie, I was already consuming a lot of content from that country, and therefore I could just swap it and listen to it and write down all the notes and get all excited about it. And then every time I would run into someone from that country, and once again, as a language student at university, we had a lot of exchange students, and I was all over those people, and they loved it because we could exchange it. Oh, let's do half an hour in Italian and then we'll do half an hour in Japanese. So yeah, no, you shouldn't choose the language that is objectively easier, because it might not be for you. And also, what's the point? Just to increase the number of languages you know, just pick a language you like.
You shouldn't pick a language if you're going to treat it like a chore. So
yes,
to maximize
okay, so we agree on that one.
their chances of success, here's a chart of some popular languages ranked by how much time it takes for an English speaker to learn them. If you're not sure what language you should start learning, I would just pick either Spanish, French, or Portuguese.
No, I would, if you're not sure what language you should start learning, I would would not pick at that point. I would try to figure out why you want to learn a language. And like, for instance, if you want to learn Spanish because you have a lot of people that you can speak to, you have to know before you start putting hours into it, because it will need a lot of hours. You have to know why. And I absolutely knew why I wanted to learn English, because I loved, apart from the fact that it was great from a business perspective to pick English up when I was a teenager. But at the same time, I had friends that were native speakers, both from England and from America. I wanted to be able to speak to them. I loved watching movies in the original language. And there were a lot of reasons that at one point I even wanted to become an English teacher, which I was for some time. So that's why I picked English first. And then after that, I got so interested in Japanese and Mandarin because of the history and the culture and the games and the anime and all that kind of stuff for Japanese, that at the end of the day, I was so fascinated by it, and I decided to pick those up.
Not only are they the easiest for English speakers, but many countries speak one of these as an official language. I don't know why, but it's probably just a weird coincidence. However, if you do want to go for a harder language, it is possible. Just remember to ask yourself, do I really have the right motivation? For example,
that's a very good question to ask. I'm going to be fair, of course, in my reviews, and I like that he's now talking about the real motivation. You need to have the real motivation. I'll comment more on that, but I want to let him finish.
Wanting to understand anime is not going to motivate you to learn Japanese for more than a day. However, my friends speak Spanish, and I want to understand them, is a pretty good motivator.
I really think it depends on the person. There are some weeboos out there that can be very motivated when it comes to learning to understand anime, like my friend. I know that because half the Japanese class was coming at university that was like anime lovers and manga lovers. I think it's also the dream of moving to Japan that really motivates a lot of Japanese students, and myself included. I lived in Japan for 4 years after I graduated from college, and I loved it. I loved every moment of it, and that was my goal. I wanted to be able to move to Japan. I wanted to be able to find a job in Japan, to live there, to make friends from Japan and experience the culture and understand the people. And that really was a massive motivator for me.
Because that's probably why they made a group chat without you. Some people have to take a language class for school, but that by itself is not a great motivator, because your finger might slip and you might accidentally paste all your assignments into deep L. However, the British invaded my country, and I need English to survive is the perfect motivation to start learning English, and so far, it seems to have been a huge success.
I mean, I can't fault that logic.
So now that you've picked your language, it's time for the easy part, which is learning it. Usually, people on the internet will tell you that the fastest method to learn any language is to get a language partner, or a tutor, or a friend who's willing to sit down with you and talk to you like a baby until you start picking up words and sentences. And while this is probably the fastest way, it requires human interaction. So instead, here's a method that you can do all by yourself
very interested.
At home to become fluent in a language. The first step is learning the basics. This is actually a very easy step.
I agree with him. If you learn the basics before you engage with natives, it will make your ability to retain most of what the native is actually teaching much more realistically effective. And that is a fact. If you full immersion is fantastic, but if you have zero basis, you can't actually make the most out of it. If you understand the basics well, which usually can take about a year, sort of depends on the language, of course. I'm speaking in averages, and it depends on how much time you've got to dedicate to the language, of course. But let's say usually on average it might take you a year, 6 months if you're like a freaking genius, 2 years if you're really busy. But after you've got the basis down, then it's time for full immersion.
Many people try to skip it by doing 1 or 2 Duolingo lessons. Other people get stuck on the language learning side of YouTube, watching 138 videos.
Well, I know, but there are some good language learning on YouTube tutorials that do help. It's not going to be the one tool that gets you to fluency, but it can be a very good tool. There are some channels that are absolutely great to help you out, pick up vocabulary, learning pronunciation if you're listening to a native, for example. So there is some really good source material on YouTube, including my channel,
about how to learn Korean, none of which include a single word of Korean. But the whole time, all you really had to do was find a beginner textbook for that language that has practice exercises for you to do.
I don't know, mate. I mean, I don't know what experience you have with learning languages, but textbook like that, if you don't speak and you don't listen, you're just going to be effective at doing the textbook exercises. That's what's that going to learn. A good basis book is absolutely necessary, but that's not enough. And in fact, even during this basic acquisition process, you have to speak with the natives a little bit, like to have those interactions a bit on chat, for example, at first, maybe. And you have to listen a lot and speak out loud, because if you just write and you don't speak, you're wasting your time. I know people hate when I say that, and I got a little backlash when I said it on my last video. I double down. Whenever you write, you have to speak it out loud. If you just write, you'll get good at writing, but most people want to get good at speaking, which means you've got to speak.
Take you a month to finish the whole thing, but the progress you'll make is equal to about 2 years of Duolingo.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
Or about 12 years of school in America. You can find these books for free just by Googling beginner, then the language, textbook PDF. And there you go. You could also just get them from the library, or as they say in France, the library. The library. Isn't the library fun to say? Imagine if you Googled it. Once you finish the beginner book, it's time to practice listening. You don't even have to worry about speaking.
Yeah, you should start listening, and I disagree that you don't have to worry about speaking. But that's just me.
Right now, because first, you need to learn what the language is actually supposed to sound like. The easiest way to do this is by watching YouTube videos in that language.
Yes.
The idea behind this is that you're not going to understand everything, but by looking at the video and using context clues from what you do understand, you can slowly pick up the language without even realizing.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%. I agree with him on this one. So I noticed that when I was a teacher, one of the main problems with language students was particularly in the A1, A2, B1 sphere, even all the way up to B1, is that they have zero experience in listening, because oftentimes what they do is that they expect to understand everything. Of course they don't, and they don't understand anything. And so they give up immediately, because it's not a rewarding feeling when you do that sort of exercise. You put up a listening practice, you understand nothing, and then you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. But you have to do it. You have to push through. Of course, don't listen to something too difficult. Try to do something appropriate to your level. But listening is monumentally important, because even if you don't understand your language, your brain is getting used to the sounds. And then sooner or later, in fact, sooner than later, you will start being able to divide the words, understand when a verb is starting. Particularly if you keep doing that listening, it will really help, and it will slow down the language for you. And you will pick up some pronunciation clues. You will start to remember words, particularly if used in context together with pictures or sensory cues, other sensory cues, and it does help.
This works especially well because every language only has a few thousand words that are actually used in regular conversation. Yeah. So over time, you'll start recognizing the same few words and phrases in every video you watch. And you can really pick anything to watch, as long as it's interesting and you can understand at least 30% of it. If you put on a video and
I'm not sure why he said 30% specifically. I don't know what he's basing that percentage on. But yeah, as long as you can understand some of it, I think it will be easier. Even if you don't understand anything, it still counts as a pronunciation and language pace exercise, just as long as you know, because you don't have to fool yourself, as long as you know that that's what you're doing. And I used to do it for hours in a row, but I was very motivated and I knew what I was doing as a student already. And I was already fluent in English when I started picking up Japanese, Mandarin, and the rest of the languages that I try to learn in my life. But if you're someone who gets demotivated easily, then I would absolutely begin with something short first, maybe something easy, give yourself a little bit of that dopamine, I guess, when you're starting to, oh yeah, I could recognize that word, I could recognize the sentence, and then progressively move up to videos that are a bit harder with the full understanding and knowledge that you're not supposed to understand everything. In fact, even if you don't understand anything of the first 10 minutes, it's still a good exercise for your listening.
It sounds like gibberish. It's not your fault. They're just talking too fast. This is probably because they're trying to gatekeep their language. Do not let them do this. To fix it, just go to the YouTube search bar and add the magic word easy.
Or slow. You have a lot of things like slow French, for instance, slow Mandarin, and they will speak slowly. Now, they're good as a beginning exercise, but you have to step out of it pretty soon, because otherwise you'll get used to just people speaking slowly, and then when they actually speak to you, they will speak fast. So it's only good as a very beginning tool to recognize the words, but you have to step out of it very fast.
And just like that, you get served up a bunch of videos that you can understand. Automatic captions also help a lot, because
Yeah.
you can rewind and look up the words you don't know. There are even websites like Reversal Context, where you can look up a word or phrase and actually see it used in a real sentence.
Yes.
But whatever you do not turn on English subtitles.
So I agree with him on this. In fact, I very much appreciate that's something I used to tell my students too. You can, if you want, occasionally, if you really didn't understand anything on a second run, you could do that just so you know what those words mean. But in fact, it would be better to not do it at all and just look at the word with the original language and then look it up. I know it's one extra step that you have to go and look it up on Google Translate or a dictionary, word reference, but it is the better choice. Putting English subtitles deactivates the area of the brain that is trying to learn the language. Even if you're still listening to the language, like you're listening to an anime in Japanese, but you put English subtitles, then your brain is not going to commit those resources needed in energy terms to try and understand the language if there is an easier method to understand what's being said. From a survival perspective, why would your body want to waste the energies that come from food to try and do something the hard way when there is an easier path?
Many people who try to learn Japanese, for example, watch anime. This is not a bad way to learn Japanese, but people who turn on English subtitles will just read the subtitles. And even though they think they're learning Japanese, in 5 years, all they'll have to show for it is this profile picture.
He's so right. Absolutely correct. And when it comes to anime and using it as a tool to learn Japanese, I agree it's not a bad tool, but you have to be careful because sometimes anime characters, depending on the setting, will speak in a way that is very unnatural in a real Japanese communicative context. So you'll have to be careful. I would say do watch your anime because you enjoy them. You have to be careful, maybe double check with the teacher if you learned a way to say stop or whatever it is that you're learning. You have to double check it with someone because you might end up sounding very arrogant or sounding out of place or saying something that, yes, the Japanese will understand, but it's going to make you sound really weird in a real context. And God forbid you do it at university, in a test, or in an actual job interview context. So anime's fine, do use it, but be careful when you do.
In the Discord Nitro subscription. But luckily, you've been using subtitles in the right language, and you can now understand at least 70% of everything you watch. It's time to unleash step 3, which is speaking. To start
I would have started way earlier with the speaking, way earlier.
Speaking, just keep watching YouTube, except now, you pause after each important sentence and repeat it out loud, or at least whisper.
Okay, so I agree with him that that's a good idea, but you need to do it the very first moment you start doing your listening exercises. They speak, pause, repeat, or even answer questions. Like imagine it's a discussion conversation and they are asking you a question, you can pause and answer yourself. The only problem with doing that on your own is that there is no one to correct you. So eventually you do, and if you say something wrong, you'll memorize something incorrectly. So a teacher, a native, someone that can help you out is still very important, unless you are like already so experienced that this is your third language or fourth language that you're picking up.
Try to pretend like you're having a real conversation with an actual person, and even think of different possible situations where you could use the sentence. Whenever you find a sentence that sounds really useful, write it down in a notebook. You're probably never going to look at that notebook ever again, but it's nice to get some writing practice.
No, I agree with him. Yeah, very good. Okay, so I don't want to watch the whole thing, and it's only an 8-minute video, and the reason why I don't want to watch the whole thing, as usual, is to encourage my subscribers and viewers to go check out the original channel. I'll give him a like, of course, and you will find a link both in the description and in a pinned comment to this original video for you to go and finish and see what he has to say. And all in all, it's not a bad video. There is so much worse, and quite a few things I absolutely agreed with him. I do wonder, however, how much experience he actually has. So did you, that's actually my question for you, Easy, actually, if you do watch this, do you speak a second language fluently? Because otherwise, I feel, and the only reason why I'm asking this, not trying to gatekeep or anything, but the only reason why I'm asking is because some of the advice, I would say, sound as if this is something that made sense in the mind of the creator of the video, but it doesn't actually have direct experience when it comes to reaching fluency. Unless I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, then we just disagree. And that maybe he does speak another language fluently, in which case perhaps we just disagree as to what is the best advice that we could give to language learners. But that's okay. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, number ones. I hope you enjoyed this reaction. I'll be making more videos, and I've been preparing some original content in the background, so that will come out soon. And thank you very much for joining Metatron's Academy. Ciao.